So it's important that you always look at things from multiple angles, and today we're going to look at the view of Brexit from Canada. Now, Brexiteers will constantly say that Canada is going to be our greatest new exporting partner come Brexit. However, not necessarily so. Now, I've said before that, well, we've done this before where we've looked at, shall we say, the view of Brexit from a different country. And the last time we did this was from the Swiss point of view. Now, the Swiss themselves are not members of the EU, but they have their own trade agreement. And the conclusion of that article was that we are the laughingstock of Europe. So, what does Canada think of Brexit and indeed the UK going through this? Well, I'm glad you asked. This article from CBC News by a guy called Evan Dyer. UK PM Theresa May, desperate for post-Brexit deals, plays a weak hand. Canada and UK form working group on post-Brexit ties, but how much can it do? The British call it the copy and paste strategy. The fond hope that their country will be able to duplicate trade agreements that it enjoys as a member of the European Union once it leaves the group in 2019. It's a shrunken ambition for those who campaigned for Brexit. After all, breaking free of the EU was supposed to restore a golden age for free trade as countries rushed to renegotiate deals with a Britain free of Eurocentric interference. The best now on offer, it seems, is to try and hang on to the deals Britain already has under the EU. That was one of Theresa May's main goals during her visit to Canada on Monday, just 3 days before the Canadian-EU trade agreement takes effect. As of Thursday, the UK will enjoy a free trade agreement with Canada that its own government economists estimate should be worth around $3.5 billion a year to the island nation. But that bonanza will be short-lived, because the British voted to leave the European Union. The UK will find itself outside of the agreement in March 2019. A deal that took 7 years to negotiate will expire for the UK after only 18 months. The Liberal Democrat MP Tom Bark describes May's visit to Canada and New York this week as racking up air miles, desperately trying to recreate what we already have. May, however, is promising Britain what she calls a seamless transition, and it's from its current EU-based trade deals to a new post-Brexit bilateral ones. Canada is willing to allow CETA to form based on the deals of based on a new deal, though not necessarily to cut and paste the original without any modifications. The British have set up a joint working groups with 13 countries, including Canada, to try and informally advance negotiating positions so that they can hit the ground running once Britain's divorce from the EU is official. But Canada is reluctant to irritate irritate the EU by seeming to rush to negotiate with the UK EU rules. With the UK, sorry, now. EU rules forbid member states from conducting their own trade negotiations. In this joint conference with May on Monday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talked about negotiations that respect the rules and requirements of the European Union. So it remains to be seen how much work those working groups will really do. If Canada and Britain were to sign a deal the day after Brexit became official, it might be hard for Canada to argue it hadn't flouted the EU rules. Brexit campaigners like Boris Johnson, now May's former secretary, assured voters in the run-up to the 2016 referendum that countries would be lining up to do business with the UK. That hasn't happened. The ruling Conservative Party, saddled with much of the responsibility for causing Brexit, is desperately trying to ensure that it doesn't sever the country's trade ties with the rest of the world. What May needs most is to show that the British people that the country is preparing for March 2019 by restoring at least some of the market access it stands to lose. And that's where Canada comes in. Sensing May's weakness, Britain's ambitious and unpredictable Foreign Secretary seems to have chosen this moment to stab her in the back. Johnson wrote a 4,000-word op-ed in the Daily Telegraph on Friday dedicated to his personal vision of Brexit. His tone was bombastic. And for a quote from it, "I am here to tell you that this country will succeed in our new national enterprise, and will succeed mightily." But the intent was treacherous. According to his fellow Conservative MPs, who almost uniformly interpreted it as Johnson's opening bid for the party leadership, and therefore May's job as Prime Minister. Once again, cabinet ministers were sniping at each other in the press. Home Secretary Amber Rudd accused Johnson of trying to drive the Brexit process from the back seat. Many in the caucuses demanded Johnson to be fired, but May has decided to ignore his act of disloyalty, and apparently calculating that her government can ill afford to add up to the impression of chaos and infighting at the top. May is vulnerable after calling an unnecessary general election in June that ended up costing the Conservatives their majority. She has believed that voters would deliver a coup de grace to a weakened Labour Party and give her a commanding 200-seat majority. She ended up re-energising the opposition. She has had to make a humiliating deal with Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party to remain in 10 Downing Street. If Britain's acrimonious divorce talks with the EU are anything to go by, the country isn't well prepared to negotiate a new global web of trade agreements. Britain's Brexit negotiators are constantly outplayed by their EU counterparts, who feel that both time and the EU rules are on their side. Attempts by the UK to reset terms of negotiations or try to change the topic from the divorce settlement to the new relationship that will emerge after the split have failed. As Britain turns to Canada and other nations to try and shore up its trade networks, its negotiators face a similar problem. Everyone knows they are desperate for a deal. Canada is quite pleased with its overall trade position at the moment, despite the fears caused by US President Donald Trump's decision to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. And this, on Thursday, Canada will gain precisely what the UK is now on course to lose: free trade with the European Union. So that's the view from Brexit from Canada. Basically, from that, there's no way other to interpret it. The Canadians can't believe we're going to lose all the, our access to free trade. And as they put it quite succinctly there, all these apparently countries that would come queuing up to sign trade agreements with us are not doing it. I don't know what else to say, but I'm sure someone will vehemently disagree with what I've just said there, but there you go. That's Brexit from the view of Canada. And as you can see there, Canada has all the cards to hold in any potential negotiations we might do with them.